Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the Seagull restoration. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So what I'm using here is a lens spanner, and it's just an adjustable spanner with tips in the end that allow you to fit those tips into the notches of the rings and retainers that hold lenses in place. And there's a couple different types of tips you can use: internal, external, and the one I'm using right now is internal. And this piece here that I'm pulling off is like a cup, and it helps direct the light, or probably eliminates any shadows or anything else that might be coming through the back or the front into the film. So this little cup I'm using, it's just a rubber cup, and you just place it over the trim rings either once you've got them loosened up, or from even when they're tight you can use them, and they're non-marring, which is the point of it, and it allows you to get even pressure all the way around the ring, and you just push it down and start turning, and hopefully it works. These two lens retainer rings, they're made out of aluminum and they don't have notches, so it is the only way you can remove these without damaging them, are these little lens cups. And this one was pretty tough. I think it was because of the aluminum threads inside the metal threads. The aluminum can corrode a little bit, or between the steel and aluminum you'll get a little bit of galling, but eventually it came. But you can see how hard I got to push here to get this thing to turn. And we'll give it another try here. This one I just got to really just keep working it back and forth, tighten, loosen, and then it slowly come off. And that ought to do it. Use the tweezers here just to get that last thread. And I got it. So just clean out the inside there. It's got some gack in there. Been in there for almost 50 years. Now I'll bring out the lens sucker. Without using any tools, you want to use a lens sucker to pull these lenses out so you don't scratch them, of course. And this lens looked really good. No fungus, no haze, just a little dirty there, as you can see. Now we'll clean it out, the threads. You can see there's one more element behind there. And this last little retaining ring. And this one just came loose, so take it out with my fingers. And there it comes. I had put a little hydrogen peroxide in there to loosen up some of the threads, and so that had seeped down inside there, and that's mostly what I'm removing when I'm wiping this off. And that retainer ring is pretty much soaked in it, so it did its job. And that won't damage the element, of course, because that's what you can use to remove fungus and fog. And we just keep going a little deeper. So now working on the viewing element retainer ring. Most of these retainer rings came off pretty easy. They shouldn't be too tight to begin with. Just enough to stop the movement. You don't want to wind them down so tight that you can't get them back apart. And they weren't like that from the factory anyways. They're just snugged up. Then we'll use the suction cup again, or the rubber cup rather, for the last few threads. And this will be the entire element. That exposes the shutter blades. There's a little bit of oil on those shutter blades that I address later on. But it seemed to work well. The springs inside were strong. Shutter speeds were pretty accurate, near as I can tell. And now the back of this taking lens is another retaining ring. And this retaining ring actually holds the shutter assembly tight in the front and holds the lens element as well. So they just kind of all squish together through the body. And there it is. And again, this one was pretty clear. The only lens that had any fungus was the outer element of the taking lens. Now time to remove the focus wheel, focus knob. It's a wheel if it has markings, and it's a knob if it doesn't, is what someone had explained to me. So I'm not sure where that came from, but you can call it whatever you want. So it has a brass nut on top of this brass stud, and it is left-hand threads. And the purpose for that is so that when you're rotating it, it does not back out underneath your leatherette. If that did, that'd be an issue, because it is not a keyed shaft. It is just a tapered shaft, and it's compressed with a rubber washer on the bottom and that brass nut on the top. And when you squish it together, that's what's holding it in place. Now there's a location pin on the bottom of it and that rides up against the cam that moves the focus from 1 meter to infinity. So I just looked to make sure that the orientation was correct, so I could remember how to put it back together. Now we'll just take off this little piece of leatherette off a winding spool knob. And I had really thought I was going to remove these, or at very least need to remove these. But as I had said before, they are riveted on. So the only reason I'm even pulling these pieces off is just to put new ones on. But I never end up removing them. And you can see the rivet down inside that hole. And if you want to remove it, you could. You just have to drill it out and find very specific rivets to put them back in. And you're certainly not going to find parts for this old camera. So this is the front cover. There are 2 Phillips head screws that hold that on. So I guess there are a couple internal Phillips screws, but these are the only 2. And it's just a trim cover for the front. Offers protection for the hood on the top and the logo, of course. And if you're wondering what this logo says, in Chinese it says Seagull. C is the first character and Gull is the second. Had to verify that with my wife. That piece will actually end up getting refinished. One of the corners had a bunch of scuffing and marks in it. So you can see the inside of this is really dirty. You see the brass shaft that runs through, connecting both cam assemblies on both sides. So that's going to pretty much do it for this video, and there'll be a part 3 coming shortly. Thanks for watching.